Welcome. Thank you everyone for spending your time here with us today, joining our webinar on ensuring quality of PPE and face masks. I'm Martin Søndergaard, and I'll be presenting today's webinar. Our agenda for today is a quick presentation of me and my colleagues here with me, and then an introduction to FORCE technology and FORCE certifications. And then we will get to the main part of the webinar, CE marking. We'll be splitting that up into three parts. We will start with what, then we will go on to why, and then we will end with how. We will have time for some questions throughout. We will answer a few after what, another few after why, and then we will have our biggest question session at the end, where we will answer as much as we have time for. The presenters today, as I said before, I am Martin Søndergaard, and I'm an analysis specialist here with FORCE Technology. I'm joined here by Niels Ovesen, who is the director of FORCE certifications. In a bit, my colleague Rasmus Forsberg from FORCE Technology will join us too, but in the meantime, we have another colleague named Erik Bjarnov here. Also in the room is Mehdi Benisi, one of our salespeople. He will be moderating the chat. He will pick up all your questions, and he will do his best to pick out the best ones to answer while we're here. The introduction of FORCE technology and FORCE certification. Who are we? FORCE Technology is an international technological consultant and service provider, and we create practical and productive solutions from specialized technological knowledge in several industries. We're accredited by DANAG for testing personal protective equipment, PPE, including face masks. And if you want any more information about FORCE Technology, then the webpage www.forcetechnology.com is a very good place to start. Going on to FORCE certification then. FORCE certification is an accredited certification body providing services within certification, verification, and inspection of products, systems, and personnel. And FORCE certification is a notified body for several European directives. It's a 100% subsidiary of FORCE Technology. And like FORCE Technology, there is a webpage for all your questions, www.forcecertification.com. We'll mainly be discussing three types of masks here. They have significant differences, but many use the same names for them interchangeably and may think they are similar. Here we start with a quick summary of the characteristics and names to avoid confusion based on nomenclature later in the webinar. The three kinds of masks are filtering face masks, medical face masks, and community face coverings. To start out with the filtering face masks, these have the common alternative names FFP1, FFP2, and FFP3 face masks, or just masks. Specific for these is that they protect the user and they go over the Personal Protective Equipment Directive. Next is medical face masks, which most of you will imagine on doctors and nurses, but are also called surgical face masks or disposable face masks. And they are meant to protect the surroundings from the user. And they go over the Medical Equipment Directive. Lastly are the community face coverings, also called face masks or fabric masks or CFC. Their protection is still being researched and therefore unknown at this time, and they are not part of a directive and therefore technically categorized as a fashion item. And then on to the main part. We will start with CE marking, what, why, and how, by asking what is CE marking. Certification bodies and product certification. What is it? Product certification is the evaluation and confirmation by an independent third party that a representative product sample meets the requirements of applicable published standard or standards. Requirements can include safety, performance, and/or quality assurance. Whether product certification is voluntary or mandatory depends on the type of project and the jurisdiction. CE mark. A notified body issues a conformity assessment certificate. And conformity assessment indicates a product lives up to relevant standards and regulations. A product with a CE mark must be in a conformity assessment program. And a conformity assessment program can include an initial factory audit, periodic inspections, and testing activities. A CE mark with a 4-digit number indicates assessment by an independent third party, and the 4 digits identify the issuing notified body. CE mark self-declaration marks. For some products, manufacturer may make a self-declaration that a product meets safety, performance, and quality requirements. This means that this does not require an independent verification of compliance, and this is indicated by CE marking with no additional numbers. Approval of masks for use against COVID-19. Medical face masks first. As I said before, these protect the surroundings. They are part of the medical device directive, and they can be classified into 3 types. There's type 1, type 2, and type 2R. And these are all something that you need to make self-declarations for, and therefore you use the CE mark for these. If you want to do this, then you need to register the project in the national database. This is going to be replaced by UDAMED. As it says here, it should be in 2021, but most people involved in this have a feeling that this is going to be postponed. And since that is the case, we can't really know when that is going to take in. The exception to these self-declaration CE marks if you're making a sterile product, then you will need to have a notified body involved, and therefore use the CE mark with their 4 digits attached. Next is the filtering face mask. This is the protection for yourself and not for the surroundings necessarily. It's part of the personal protective equipment regulation, and it can be classified into 3 types. We will mainly be talking about 2 of them because the third isn't relevant in hospitals, that being the FFP1, but the relevant ones are the FFP2 and the FFP3. And these all need product type approval via a notified body, and therefore the mass production must also be monitored, and you will need to use the CE mark with 4 digits of the notified body. That ends the first part of the CE mark. So we will answer a few questions if maybe have any that were relevant in the chat.
Yes, hello everyone, and thank you, Martin. I'm seeing a lot of familiar names who I've been communicating with in the last 6 months. Welcome to a new. We are approximately right now, and I'm actually a little bit shocked about the lack of questions coming in, but fortunately we asked you guys to send in some questions when you register, and let's start with those. So there is one here, and seemingly we have a lot of attendees from outside of Europe as well. And the question is, what are the demand for EN149 from South Korea?
Well, first of all, we need to have a test for EN149 that proves it fulfills the requirements.
Yeah.
Then you need an EC type examination with a notified body within the EU. And you will need also to have an arrangement with this body or another notified body for the manufacturer, the conformity assessment during production.
Okay. And Eric, is that then the same scenario if you look at South Korea or we look at, let's say, China? It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Okay. Okay, perfect. And there was also another quick one. I don't know which of you gentlemen can answer this, but what are the differences between the RFU, which was introduced by the European Commission back in March, and the EN 149? Can you just briefly talk about that?
That's one of the simpler questions, because the RFU are only given for products against COVID-19, and EN 149 is for general use also.
Okay.
If I may add, yes, that's the use of them. Considering according to the testing that we perform for this, then the RFU is a reduced version of the EU EN 149. That is why you need to put on your mask that it is only for corona use if you've had it tested according to the RFU. If you want to keep selling your mask in the EU, then you need to have it tested according to EN 149. That includes tests, and it includes harsher requirements, and many of the masks also need to be preconditioned to simulate what your mask will be experiencing before your end user actually uses it. That means that we will condition it according to temperature, according to mechanical strength, and a lot of other stuff, meaning that EN 149 is just a bigger version of the RFU. The RFU is what you're used to.
Okay. Thank you. And this is from Commander in the chat forum. He's asking, what are the standards of face shield compared to medical mask and filtering mask?
Touché.
What are the differences, or what are
the standards of face shield compared to medical mask and filtering?
We don't know this fact.
No.
But there is a list of harmonized standards.
So basically, looking into the standard EN 166, and they can see the standard.
No, well, you can see it on the list of harmonized standards within specific regulations, directives, EU regulation and directives. There's a website for that in EU, where you can see which standards are harmonized to which directives and regulations. If a standard is harmonized, it means that if you fulfill the principle is that if you fulfill that standard, you also fulfill the directive or the regulation. So for this, you should look for in the list of harmonized standard which is relevant for your product, and then see if you can fulfill that standard. Then you presumably will also fulfill the directive and the regulation.
Okay, so Commander, this was an in-depth answer to your question. But of course, if you need more clarification on it, you can send me an email and take it from there. And there is also one more. I hope you take that, Martin. Before we move to one more. Yeah. CE marking process of RFU tested mask.
Well, you have to test your product. In principle, this should have been tested according to EN 149. But then, if you use the RFU, you during this COVID-19 period, you can use the test program. But still, you fulfill the what is in the regulation called essential health and safety requirements. That means that you fulfill the essential health and safety requirement in the regulation if you have tested the requirements of the RFU. Recommendations use, is as it says.
Okay.
Now, so if you can comply with those test results, then subsequent you will have to. Then you will your EC type examination certificate can be issued by the notified body. And secondly, then now you know that the type is acceptable. And then later on you gotta ensure that the next 100,000 produced are exactly the same as the one you type tested. And that's why we call it some kind of surveillance certification. That means either you have to fulfill the requirement for the module D or the module C, as called C2 in the directive. Module D is a quality assurance assessment, and C2 is a sampling of the product. I think that we'll come to that later. So that will be the next step, that you certify that.
Thank you, Mila Maria, for that. But I think this also deserves to be in this questionnaire session as well. Maybe you have an answer for that, Niels. When is the ending period for RFU? Because there's a question here asking, for instance, EUA for USA is only valid to end of this year.
The problem was that the commission started with saying that and they still say that the RFU was valid until the COVID-19 period crisis is over.
Yeah.
And everybody thought that would be by this year, but now it's extended.
Okay.
So I would say until the I cannot say it's this year or this half a year, but presumably when the vaccine is covering most of the people and so on, then it's not valid anymore. But again, your product is only valid for COVID-19.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter. So because if you want the masks to be used outside the COVID-19, then it's not in compliance anymore.
Okay. But also to add on that, Jesse, when testing here with force and also getting a certificate for the RFU, we are validating it 6 months from the date of issue. I don't know if that information is valuable for you. So 6 months from validation issue of certification. So I think that was
that's the question we have time for now. So we'll continue on, and if there are more questions, then we will put them in the end. And if you have any questions for the next part coming up, then we will answer those just after. The next part will be why get a CE approval and why does it even exist. We'll start by going through some definitions because they will be useful heading on from here. Certified product is a product that's been tested and certified by an accredited organization. Compliance is what a product or system shows when it meets applicable regulatory requirements. Conformity documents are documents from an accredited organization or self-declaration by the manufacturer where applicable, showing compliance to the applicable standards. This may include test reports and certificates. Counterfeit marked product which bears a certification mark, but that has not been certified by an accredited TIC organization. End user, the person who uses the product, typically the product's consumer. Manufacturers, the organization who assembles and distributes the final product. Rogue operators, individuals and organizations taking advantage of the system and falsifying test reports and certification documents. Regulation authorities, individuals or agencies responsible for ensuring products have been appropriately tested and certified. Regulatory requirements, rules and guidelines applied to different consumers and commercial products developed to minimize harm. TIC, testing, inspection, and certification. Market access. Not all markets are the same. The nuances and requirements for some products from market to market are important. When product manufacturers expand into international markets and move their products across borders, they become subject to the country's requirements for product compliance. While many countries have similar regulatory requirements for some products, depending on the product and the application, the nuances in the standards from country to country may allow for it to be sold in one location, but not the other. If the manufacturer is not willing to make the product adjustments or simply cannot afford the investment to comply with the country standards, they then cannot sell in that market. If you purchase a product and change something on it, then you are considered the manufacturer of the new product. If you import a product into the EU from outside the EU, you become responsible for the product's compliance with the EU regulations. And if you sell a product, you are responsible for its compliance with EU regulations. Why these restrictions? The development of countries' or regions' standards, codes, and regulations are often a long process and evolves over time. As new products or technology enters a market, government officials, industry associations, and consumer advocates typically collaborate to set forth the regulatory requirements. While the process may be perceived as slow and frustrating, the result typically lends to products that pose less risk to people, property, and environment. The testing, inspection, and certification industry and regulatory authorities. Countries around the world have different requirements to test and certify products. For example, some countries allow the manufacturer to self-declare their product's compliance and performing their own conformity assessment against the regulatory requirements. This means a third-party organization is not needed, not necessary to show compliance, and it is incumbent on the manufacturer to show proof that they have met the necessary regulatory requirements. In other countries, product must be tested and certified by an independent third party to show compliance. That's why the testing, inspection, and certification industry provides independent third-party conformity assessment services and uses industry experts to carry out impartial evaluations, audits, and inspections of products, systems, and personnel against various private, national, and international standards and regulations. As an accredited testing body, Force Technology can assist with testing, impartial evaluation, and inspection. And as an EU-approved certifying body, Force Certification can assist with certification and audits of products and systems. The process before market access. Testing is a series of procedures and measures that check the product's characteristics of conformity, i.e. performance and/or safety. Most countries and regions require the product pass some sort of regulatory testing, and they must show proof of the test via test report or certificate of conformity. The inspection is a product's design, process, and installation may need to be examined either prior to or after being released into the market to ensure conformity. This means manufacturers' factory, supply chain, and process may be inspected as well. Inspections may be a requirement of or independent from product certification. And lastly, the certification, that is verification from a third-party accredited organization, providing evidence and assurance that the product complies with the specified requirements of a standard or regulation. Change in the situation leads to increased number of attempts to falsify documentation. Increased complexity creates challenges for manufacturers to control their quality and production, and it burdens the authorities who monitor and enforce the country or region's product regulations. Unfortunately, this has opened the window of opportunity for rogue operators to take advantage of the complexities and circulate counterfeited or pirated products. Some manufacturers, importers, and other distributors choose an alternative path and become rogue operators, intentionally bypassing the proper verification channels, counterfeit testing documentation, a certificate of conformity, and/or fraudulent certification mark on the product label or packaging. Often this is done to save money and time in getting their products to market. That was the end of the why section, so we've reached another point where we can answer a few questions. So Mehdi, if you have anything.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. And for those of you just joining us, welcome. Actually, I wanted to just to go 2 minutes back in your presentation, Martin, because you started by saying not all markets are the same. And there is a question regarding that, and I thought maybe Niels, if you could answer that. Regarding the RFU, does the Danish Safety Technology Authority, Sikkerhedsstyrelsen, approve this?
Yeah, so I've done that. Yeah, yeah, they've done that.
Okay.
During the COVID-19 period, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. There's a question here from Mikael. If a face mask is marked with CE FFP2 and not with the manufacturer's name, can you then suspect it is a fake mask?
It is a fake mask.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can at least assume that they don't fulfill the requirement. If it's a face, it could be a mask that has been repacked or something like that. But at least there are requirements for CE marking, and the content of marking of the marking on the package, including manufacturer, distributor, EU importer, and the user manual and so on. More repetitive. So I don't know if it's a fake mask, but at least it doesn't fulfill the requirements.
You want to add to that, Eric?
Well, yes.
Yes.
In the RFU, there is a requirement that the mask itself shall be marked with a type identifying marking and the manufacturer logo or name or something.
Okay. Then there is a question here, and that is from just here, from Mila Maria again. How do you check if a mask on market is checked by a notified body? Is there a list somewhere?
No, unfortunately not. If you're talking about masks for PPE, then the notified body should be mentioned on the package. The
4-digit. Is that what?
Yes, yeah. But also the name of the notified body.
Okay.
If it's a mask according to the medical directive, then it's again a self-declaration. So there's no need for a notified body always in that respect. But there's a list of notified body for different directives, but there's not a list of manufacturer.
Okay. I hope that answered your question, Mila Maria. Now I would like to touch upon one of the questions that we received during the registration phase. There's a question here. I would like to know what criteria there are for marketing a mask using CWA 17533. Can you guys explain in more detail what the end user can?
First of all, I would say that CWA tested masks are not according to the Personal Protective Directive. They're not according to the medical directive, so they cannot be CE marked. It's a nice fashion you can wear, but it has nothing to do with protection legally, and therefore there are really no requirements for how to enter these masks into the market, as long as you don't indicate protection. That's the important thing, because if you in any case indicate protection, then it might, and then it's a personal protective equipment, or it's a medical device equipment, and that's not the case for these until now, at least.
Is it then different how the different authorities in Europe are proceeding this? I mean, looking into the CWA guideline, because it is a guideline, and this question has been we have received from different customers.
I'm pretty sure that all authorities agree that this is not a PPE product, personal protective equipment product, and you cannot CE mark. I'm not aware of differences in actually entering into the market, how that's evaluated and how this is judged in different countries. But the main point is that you cannot CE mark.
Okay. There's a question in here from Shirley. Must the importer of filtering mask be approved by Sikkerhedsstyrelsen in order to be able to sell in the Danish market?
They know that you don't have to be approved by Sikkerhedsstyrelsen, but you have to be approved by a notified body, or a conformity assessment has to be performed by a notified body, and then in order to CE mark by yourself. Sikkerhedsstyrelsen is a Danish Sikkerhedsstyrelsen is an authority, but they don't issue approvals.
Okay. Thank you, Niels. Can we take the last one, Martin, before you move to?
I think we can do one more.
Yeah. So this is in from John, and I'm actually glad you brought this up, John, because this type of question we receive a lot. So he's writing, we are exporter of medical face masks and non-sterile type 2 in Vietnam. So he had two questions. Is that okay to self-certify? And then can we export to EU with that self-certification? That's the first question. And the second one is, if we need a test report, do we need to do that with a notified body?
You don't have to do it according to a notified or with a notified body. You should a test is presumably more valid if you use an accredited body, a European accredited body. But yes, you can export it to Europe, but the importer or one has to register in the database from medical devices, and you or your importer in the EU are responsible for that product. That means that the market surveillance in Europe, they can prosecute you if there's something wrong with the product. You are responsible. But in principle, yes, you can sell it with your test report, accredited test report, and that you are convinced that all requirements are fulfilled in the regulation, medical device regulation.
Okay. And this registering, is that with the authorities in that specific country you want to sell?
Just one of the authorities in Europe.
Okay. I hope that was an answer to your question, John. But again, if you have other questions to elaborate on that, you can always write to me. At the end of Martin's slide, there is information about how to get in touch with me, and I will try to answer some of these questions that we didn't reach today. So Martin, I will leave the floor to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mehdi. We'll continue then. We're on to how do I ensure that the product that I sell fulfills the regulations. We're going to have 4 slides now that are similar in some aspects. The differences are whether you are a producer or an importer of masks, or whether you are importing a product that needs a self-declaration or it needs approval via a notified body. So first up, we have how do I ensure that the product that I sell fulfills the regulations if you are the manufacturer of a product that requires self-declaration. You need to get your product tested by an accredited test body to get valid documentation that it fulfills the needed standards. You can do this at least. It's not needed since it's a self-declaration, but it is a good way to make sure that no one can question the test results that you use as part of backing up your product. Alternatively, you can undertake the testing yourself, but as I said, the documentation may be questioned. Get your product audited and certified by a certification body. It's also voluntary in this case. Then you need to submit your technical declaration of conformity, and request for documentation to the national regulatory authorities. And these regulatory authorities are called a variety of names around the world, depending on where you are. They may be referred to as authorities having jurisdiction. How do you ensure that a product that I sell fulfill the regulations? Now we're on to if I import or sell a product that requires self-declaration. You're responsible for the registration and that the product fulfills the regulations. You need to check the documentation of the product and the labeling, and if there is a test report from an accredited testing body. You need the documentation is correct, that you can submit the technical documentation, declaration of conformity, and request for documentation to the national regulatory authorities. And if the product is already declared in the country or in another EU country, then with the same regulations, you do not have to declare it again, as we went over previously. Then you can just sell it. On to if you are the manufacturer of a product that does require product type approval via a notified body. Then do you have a certified quality control in your production? If not, then you need to contact a certification body to get it. You need to get your product tested and approved by an accredited testing body, and you need to submit the test report and certificate to supervised product check along with technical documentation to a EU notified body to get the CE certification. And lastly, if you import or sell a product that requires product type approval via a notified body. Firstly, if you change the product, then you are considered a manufacturer, and then you need to go back a few slides to see what that says. But you need to check the product has a valid and passed test report from an accredited testing body, and then you need to check that the product has a valid CE certificate from an EU notified body. Now we get on to how do I check that the documentation is valid. There are some things to look for first, and there's a list here that I'll go through. Changes in font, changes in language, deviation from normal, distorted or wrong logos, inconsistent information, misformatted documentation, misspelling of common words, poor grammar, or wrong colors. And these are all some things that you might think twice about. How do I check this? I have some examples coming up here. So firstly, misaligned logo is an easy thing to see that should catch your eye and make you question whether this seems reasonable. As you can see, the two documents here look otherwise pretty reasonable, but the misaligned logo on the right report should raise questions. General appearance of a document. this shows a lot of things. There are inconsistent spacing between the line and the top of the document. There are different sizes of fonts. There are different fonts. You can't really read the table very well. It looks like someone just mashed it together without much thought. And a test report like this that just seems unprofessional should raise some questions too. And talking about unprofessional organization of testing documents, here we have in the top an example of information overlapping. That should not be the case because it makes it harder to read the individual things. In the middle, you can see missing addresses and contact information for the manufacturer. This is needed and should be filled out. And in the bottom, you can see an attempt to cover up the fact that the test is failed with a big stamp, also a bad sign. Another thing to look out for is incorrect marks or wording. On the left, we have someone trying to use the mark of tooth. Unfortunately, they have forged the wrong logo, and the right one is shown underneath. On the right, you can see someone trying to spell out flush mount, but instead ending up putting Flusen mount in the report. This is another good example of a test report that is probably false. If you've gone through all this in the documentation you receive, then we get to where to get help. Accredited testing and certification companies are generally happy to help regulatory authorities, distributors, and even end users verify the authenticity of test reports or certifications in their name. Resources to verify testing and certification bodies are below here. And as we talked about earlier, there is a list of accredited labs for mask testing. You can download a PDF of these labs, and NANDO, the EU database for bodies and authorities, are also available. So there are 3 links that you should get access to when you get this a recording on this after the webinar. That's 3 places to look. You should check the directives, but also if they are approved for the right subsections. Different laboratories can be approved for whole directives or just parts of them. So it is important to look into the specific one and see whether they're accredited to the specific product you're looking at. And again, all of this is something you can get help with from, for an example, FOSS certification and technology. That was the last part. So we're on to the questions, and we have 10-12 minutes for whatever people want to ask us.
Perfect. Thank you, Martin, again. So a lot of you guys also on email have asked me if whether this presentation will be available later. You will all receive this presentation. It has been recorded. And now you can see me. So yes, this will be shared with you guys afterwards, the presentation, but also the recording. So you can listen in whenever you have time or have any curious information you want to have answer for. So being in this third section now, Martin, the how, there's a couple of questions also from the registration phase. Question regarding machine and same manufacturer but different locations. How do they deal with the certification process? So what I'm reading out of this question is it's the same manufacturer or company who has the same machinery in different locations. So, and they want to have a certificate. Do they need a certificate for each site, or is one sufficient?
They need, well, for the EC or EU type examination certificate, which is called for PPE Module B or the certificate, then you only need one, because it's the same product. It's the same. You have identified, you have tested, you have seen that, verified that the product fulfills the basic requirement of the regulation. But if it comes to the next certificate, which is either a Module D or a Module C2 certificate, that's the surveillance certificate. That means what I was talking about before, that now you have seen that the type is acceptable, but how do you verify that the next 100,000 you produce are exactly the same as the one you type tested? And for these certificate, you need to have two different, or a certificate for each manufacturing site. So for the EC type examination, you only need one, but if you have different sites, manufacturing sites, you need a certificate for each one. That doesn't mean that you cannot combine the sites in one certificate, but it means that you have to audit, you have to sample from both sites. But
okay. And Eric, just want to bring you into this. Would that also entail that you test from both sites, mask that comes out from both sides, or is it sufficient to see one of them and test the other?
Well, during the type examination, we look at the type that you send in and see that it fulfills. But then in the product manufacturing surveillance, then we need to test both parts.
Okay, good.
Before we continue, I'll just change the slide here, because then you will all see Mitty's information. You can write those down if you need them.
Yeah.
We will continue with the questions. This was just for your ease as a viewer.
Okay, perfect. Now you have my details as well. So staying with the EN 149, this question has also come in if it's mandatory to do the entire test program in order to get a certificate.
Yes.
Pretty short. That was pretty.
There are no shortcuts.
Okay, there's no shortcuts. Okay. That was quite, yeah. But have we seen, this question is not, put up there for curiosity. I think it's more like this is something people are getting information about, that you could actually not do the entire, but still get a certificate.
But then again, I think it's confused. It's confused with the RFU. So that means that the limited test program, valid products which should be marketed or will be marketed during the COVID-19 period, pandemic period, and is only for protection against COVID-19.
Okay.
So if you, but in generally, if you want to see a mask in the next 5 years, where hopefully the pandemic is over, then there's no shortcut. Then you have to fulfill the requirements of the test program of the EN 149.
Okay.
And I might want to add here that some people might think of that as, oh, we can just take one of the tests out, but that is not how it works when you go from a 149 to RFU. It is a specific amount and specific examples of tests that you need to do this RFU. You can't just say, I completed 9 of the 10, let's exclude the 10th. It is specific tests that you need to comply with even in the RFU.
Now we are with the RFU. There's a question here again from Commander. He's saying that I think you guys should check up if Sikkerhedsstyrelsen approves RFU. As far as I've heard, they once approved it, but not sure they still do. Niels, do you think, or Martin, or Eric, do you think it has to do with the fact that before summer the RFU also got a little bit more light, that they removed one strict test, which was the paraphenol test, that now we see some markets maybe putting question mark on the quality?
From what I know about this, the RFU is accepted by the Sikkerhedsstyrelsen for sale in Denmark. But that does not necessarily mean that everyone in Denmark accepts it as good enough to buy it. I have heard of hospitals that you could technically sell it to that don't want to buy it because they themselves have stricter guidelines for what they want to accept. So the problem here is not that you are not allowed to sell RFU masks. The problem is that some people will be more strict in what they're buying.
Okay. Thank you for that. I hope that was sufficient, Commander. And there is a question here from Lene Hansen. How often should we perform the testing according to EN 14683? Is it a yearly test?
That's medical device.
Yes, 14683, medical face mask.
Whoa, wait a minute. Because that's... I'm not sure, but you have to convince yourself that that the tests you have done initially, that's still valid for the product during the next year for sale. There's no, as far as I'm concerned, no requirements for regular testing. That's part of the manufacturing control. And in the manufacturing control, you can test, you can inspect, you can do whatever you like to ensure that the product which are going out from the factory are still in compliance with the regulations. But I'm not aware of any requirement for a yearly or second yearly test.
No. Okay.
Testing.
No. Lena, we could take this in a mail correspondence afterwards. Can try to look this up for you and give you an answer. I
could just add that if you're an importer in EU and these masks are manufactured somewhere else outside EU, then you take over as an importer the responsibility, fully responsibility of the product. So the continued compliance with the regulation should be in your hands as an importer, or whether you take that as your test here when you come as a batch testing coming into the EU, or you have a good relation with the manufacturer outside the EU and have all the documentation ready for marketing inspection. That's up to you. But as long as you, as an importer, you have the full responsibility.
Okay, thank you very much, Niels. If there is no other questions here in this chat forum, I will then would like to end this presentation of today by saying that we have a series of webinars coming up, and this was the first one in English, and the second one will be in January. It will be in relations to gloves and safety box and syringes. So that is an interesting webinar, which I believe many of you would be interested in also participating in. Since you have registered yourself here at this webinar, you will automatically be invited for that one as well. Once we have the date, this will be sent out to you. So if there is no other input from the gentleman I have here, we would like to say thank you for your time, and see you in January. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for your time, everyone. Have a nice day.